Welcome to the Demography Today lecture series sponsored by the BBVA Foundation and Lompon Project, Horizon 2020 project. And we have the pleasure today to have María Ángeles Durán. María Ángeles is a professor of sociology and research professor with the Spanish National Research Council, where she headed in the past the Department of Socioeconomic Analysis. She holds honorary degrees from the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid and the Universities of Valencia and Granada, and she has received the Pascual Madoz National Award for Research in Social, Legal and Economic Science and the National Award for Research in Sociology and Political Science just last week from the 2018 award. She collaborates regularly with academic and research institutions and has worked with international organizations such as the Economic Commission for Latin America, the World Health Organization, and UN Women. And we are really pleased that she's part of our Department of Population and of our team. And she's coming today to talk about the demographic frame of economics of care. She's an international expert on care and the use of time. So as usual, welcome to our lecture series. It's a pleasure to have you here. And normally we have between 45 minutes to 1 hour talk, and then we open the floor for questions. And so welcome.
Well, good afternoon. It's really a pleasure being this afternoon here with all of you, and especially with my colleagues from the Department of Population at the Council for Research. I will talk about the demographic frame of the economics of care. So I will start just giving a short, abbreviated definition of what is economics of care. In economics of care, what we deal is with the production and the consume of care. But in this way, it seems very easy. In fact, it is not at all easy, because what is care? To start with this problem, there are so many definitions of care. Some of them are very restricted. Care seems to be just applying some sort of physical transformation to someone else. But in other cases, we define care in a very, very broad way. For instance, just paying attention, for instance, being responsible, that nothing will injure the person we are caring, or, for instance, cooking for this person, even cooking for ourselves. Is this care? Self-care is included in the definition of care. In the case we are using the very, very broad definition, we are talking in Spain to a volume of time that is much higher than all the volume of care produced for the labor market. It's not easy to integrate in the same framework the economics of care of the unpaid care and the economics of care of the paid care. Why? Because the economics of care of paid care is more or less like any other service sector care. It applies the laws of the market. You have producers, the consumers, the price, taxes, everything is similar to any other sector. But when we are dealing with the unpaid care, nothing helps us because there is no price. We don't know if we should take into consideration possible taxes, possible social security payments. We don't know what kind of shade salary we should apply. So it is really a sector that deserves very good research, but also very innovative research. It is not enough having data or having a theoretical framework. We also need a sort of consensus between researchers all along the world, because the data are not referred to one country only. They are referred to all the world. And if we want to make international compared research, we need to have some kind of agreement. And this agreement still has not been produced. So when we are talking about economics of care, for instance, about production, we may disagree very deeply with the results of a colleague. Why? Because for instance, this colleague is saying, well, the shade salary will be 4 euros per hour, while the other one will say, no, because I will include taxes, I will include social security, I won't be talking of the minimum salary, but of the median salary. The other one will say, well, but I will take into consideration that care is produced by women and the average salary of women is different from men. So we have now 30, 40 different results about how high or what is the percentage in respect to the gross product, and we have to arrive to a consensus. Who will be able to get consensus between researchers, politicians, users? Probably only one international institution. I'm claiming to several international institutions to become leaders and take the vanguard and say, this is the definition we all assume, and at least a minimum consensus. And after this, we can talk and we can make international comparisons. But if we have not a consensus on the definition of the main concepts, it is really, really difficult to study the evolution or the distribution of production or consume of care in different regions, countries, social classes, or no matter what we are dealing with. So we will start. As I know that most of you are demographers, what I am going to say is really very, very well known for all of you, but in any case. First, I want to get your attention to this phenomenon that the population pyramids are becoming towers. And in many cases, more than towers, they are diamonds or they are even champignons, because we are having a lot of people, aged people, and very smaller towers sustaining the top of the so-called pyramid. This is more a political approach to the question. I will go very fast, but it would be useful to ask who is obliged to care and why, and until what a limit. Because, for instance, historically, we know about several sicknesses that were considered a sort of punishment for former misconducts, and people were taken out of society. Now, who has the obligation to care? For instance, excuse me, you are obliged to care for whom, and how long, and until what degree, and what you are obliged to pay or to do for this person. The other person does agree. It is reciprocal, the relationship between the person who is obliged to care and the person who feels that has the right to be cared. Well, very often we only talk about conciliation between employment or jobs and care. Well, not only. We should also think about the conciliation of personal life, just being active in politics, in culture, in love, whatever we want to be. But care is a very, very demanding occupation, and it is very difficult to conciliate with all kinds of other activities. Also, I don't have a lot of time, so I will not talk about this, but it matters very much the transition between an individual relationship to one collective political, legal relationship. If we are taking care of other person just in an individual base, we perhaps will be tempted, or just we will need to do it in the base of a political situation, of a political relationship. It is not only an individual relationship, it is a political, structural, so political relationship. So we should, in some moment, go from the need to the demand. And this is an important political change. We need, yes, we need, but very often we don't demand because we don't trust that the other will receive our demands. If we are organized, we can change, and something that was only an individual need will become a collective need and recognized as a moral, legal, political necessity. I'm talking about a new social class. And as this is something very new, I have no words to describe this new class. I am sharing with you this invention of new terms, of new words. And the word I want to share with you is cuidatoriado. When I'm talking to the press, they always say, how do you say? Cuida what? And I say, yes, cuidatoriado. In English, I tried with different dictionaries, and I didn't find, of course, I didn't find the word, so I cannot translate it. So we all are looking at the birth of a new word, the birth in English of the word cuidatoriado. Cuidatoriado, phonetically, I want to assimilate it to proletariado and to campesinado. That's why I used this word, because it sounds more or less like proletariado. Because proletariado was the main class for understanding the Industrial Revolution and the society of the 19th and also, to some extent, to the 20th century. But now we are in the 21st, and the social structures are changing mainly in the more advanced countries. In the more advanced countries, services are a very important production and consumption sector, and we are aging. This means that at 65, we will become out forever of the labor market. And lots of people will be over 65. This means that a lot of people, a very high percentage of the population, will be forever out of the possibility of producing values, producing goods or services for the market. And they will, how do you say, well, the only money they will get will be from the retirement pensions. What happens if you need a lot of care, but you have little money to pay for care? Who will provide for you the care you will need? That's why demography is so important, and that's why I think they invited me to come this afternoon here. Because demography will say how many people, how much, will be demanding care but living on pensions and not having any possibility of paying care according to the legal price of the labor market. One example, someone with Alzheimer's needing 24 hours daily and 365 days yearly of care. Having a pension, a retirement of, for instance, 1,000 euros. The average pension for a woman in Spain is 650. For a man, it is 1,000. Well, how much care can we pay if we only have this pension? We can suppose we hire someone for 24 hours, and we only have a pension of 1,000 euros, and the legal price will be 500, for instance, 5 euros. Well, after 3, 4, 5 days, we are exhausted, we have no more money, and we still have to live without care most of the month. That's why demography is so important. Well, it seems that I am talking only about aging. No. Also, there are a lot of other kinds of people needing care. And demography also is important for giving us the information we need for any kind of social politics, or also for economic policies. For instance, children. What is happening with children? Children are great consumers of care, But at present time in Spain and in so many other countries, children arrived after planification. It means that they only come to our households once we have called them. This means that we only call, in most cases, of course not every, but in most cases, we only call them when we think that we are able to provide the care children need. And also, children have a lot of services provided by the public administrations. So if you put together the resources that can provide the households, the parents, the resources provided by the state, providing schools, gardens, and all kinds of services for children, and also a little help from the market, paying someone to help us taking care of them, it means that in Spain, most children are well covered in the need of care. After, we should talk about the adult population. Population between 15 and 65 years old don't require a lot of personal care, and they provide themselves a lot of care for themselves. But if they are not important in the amount that every person needs of care, they are very important in the volume. I mean, in any pyramid or in any tower, there are a lot of people just between 15 and 65, and they require care. They need to have meals, they need to have clean clothes, sometimes they get sick, so they need care. And they are a lot of people. What we have done, well, I say we because I'm modest, but I should say me, I have decided that the average consume of care by the population between 15 and 65 is the canon. I don't know how many hours, but just it is a canon, a metro. It is useful just to compare with other groups. And the canon is population from 15 to 65 consumes 1 unit of care per person. The others, we will say, well, they consume 2, 3, 4, as we prefer, but only is a comparison with the metro, the canon, that is the consumed by the population in the just active population, the so-called active population. I have no time here to talk in deep about the Madrid scale or the Durán scale or the Santiago scale. There are scales of dependency ratios, but with a weighted by the age of the population we are referring to. So, for instance, the more common one, so-called now Durán scale, applies a weight of 3 points to children from 0 to 4, and 2 points for the children between 5 to 14. Also, it applies a weight of 2 points for the population between 65 and 80, and 3 points to the population over 80 years old. This means that if you work with the data from the United Nations, you can compare very well just in this very, I would say it is not a very, very deep kind of comparison, but at least it is something. You can compare the demand of one country or one region for 1 year in the present or in the future with the demands of a different country. And you can compare the structure of the demand as well as the structure of the production. I already talked about the problem of integrating the economics of care, the conventional economics of care, that only takes into account the costs and the production having a price going through the market, and the production out of the market. What is more interesting from the scientific point of view? The conventional economics of care, just referring to the care market, or the economics out of the market. of course, it is much more challenging and interested and everything. It deserves all my attention at least. The economics of care out of market. First, because we cannot pay care through the market. And we cannot do it because of the way prices are forming. If we think together about the formation of the price of one good, you first have to take into account the number of hours, paid hours of labor that requires the production of this good. But you also have to add taxes, the use of infrastructures, the capital, all this. Well, you never can sell a good or a service higher than what the market will pay for it. If the care requires a lot of time, this means that care will be always very expensive. And most of the population will never be able to pay the cost, the real cost of the production of care. So the market is not able to solve the problems of the demand of care. Even the population, the active population, the population potentially active between 15 and 65, usually is not able to pay for care. So they require, to solve the whole problem of the demand of care, it is necessary that someone will do it without getting payment. And who will do it? In several years, we will need, what do you think, more or less care, hours of care? We are reducing the demand of care in a very easy but very dramatic way, reducing the number of children. The import-export in Spain, in fact, is the import-export of people. And we are importing people because it is very, very expensive to produce people, because just the pregnancies and the time after and the care of the children until they are independent and they can sustain themselves, it's really expensive. But it is not so much expensive in money, it is expensive in time, in care. Who will do it in the future? We are already reducing so much, demographers tell us, the number of births. Well, but if we reduce the number of births, sooner or later, we will have the such of new kind of pyramid, that is the champion. And having a champion, who will have available care? Demography, again, is very interesting. When the demographers tell us the difference at the age of marriage for men and women, and the difference in the age of death. So, if I can make a joke, Spanish men, at the end of their life, they are handsome, they are rich, and they are happy. They are handsome because they don't get so often sick. So they don't get all these kinds that make us, little by little, step by step, make us more ugly because we are older. So men don't get so old, but they die. Yes, it is a balance. They are nicer, let's say, but they die. And they are richer than women. Why? Because they don't donate. They don't present their time. They sell it to the market. So the market is, well, it is honest and gives them back a lot of privileges. Better pensions, better savings, better control of both things. Women, no. Women don't sell so much their time. So at the end of their lives, they are poor. But the most important is not this. The most important is that men are happier, or they have more opportunities to be happier at the end of their lives, because they are so bright that structurally, not one, most of them, they get married, or if not married, just they get a partner of a woman who is much younger. At the beginning, just 2 or 3, 4 years younger. In the second partnership, maybe 20 years younger. This means that for men, it is very easy to have a caregiver at the end of their life, even if they don't need to pay him her. While for women, most women, when they arrive to the end of their lives, they have not a partner, because they got married with a man who was older than they were, and also they have the very bad habit of dying so soon. So at the end of their lives, women will be alone and having very low pension, and also suffering much more morbidity than men had. Demographers also give us a very important information about the distribution in the space of caregivers and caretakers. In Spain, at this moment, we have a lot of migrants producing care. Most of them are women. And where do they go, migrants, for offering care? Of course, they go to the richest regions. And inside a city, they go to the more affluent neighborhoods. Demographers tell us where they come from. And they will tell us that most of them in Spain come from Latin America. Why? For instance, in construction, for building buildings, many of them come from other cultural communities, but for caring, language is important. So most of the caregivers are women, if they are migrants, and they speak Spanish as a native language. A very political question. How are situated the caregivers in the social structure in Spain? I don't know, probably most of you are not sociologists in a strictus sensus, and they are not dealing with the problem of the social structure. But in case you were, you would agree with me that there are many different images of social classes in Spain and of the social structure. In any case, did you ever think about what social class is the class of a caregiver? The same one of her father, the same one of her husband, of her son? How can we decide? If the criteria is labor or employment or job, it is so difficult to situate the social class of the caregivers. In last year, one of the sectors with the highest level of social conflict was caregivers. Not, of course, unpaid caregivers, but paid caregivers. Why? At the moment, the city, the administration of the city creates a new service for providing care. They are introducing a very important change in the social structure. While care was provided by the household, and by tradition they were women who were providing the care, conflict was underlined. It was very difficult to see openly. It doesn't mean that conflict didn't exist. It only means that it was not easy to see it. But once the cities are offering, or the state are offering services for care, the workers get the possibility of getting unionized. It is almost impossible having an open conflict with labor conflict declared. in the relationship between a household and a household employee. But it is very easy to get a conflict if you only have an enterprise producing services for a city or for a public administration and a lot of different households. For instance, in case you were the caregiver, will you denounce to the police or to the judges your employer? No. Very, very probably you will never do this. Why? Because you have a personal relationship. Also because you are isolated. You have no real close representatives. But when you become just an employee for a public service or for the enterprise producing services for the public administration, you immediately are surrounded by other workers with the same situation. So you acquire a class consciousness immediately. And you have a union, and you have your representatives, and you can ask for the declaration of a conflict with not a personal immediate punishment. Last year, it was one of the most conflicted sectors in all the labor market in Spain. And in my opinion, this will be worsening in the coming years, because the conditions of the caregivers workers is very, very low as compared with the other workers. Will they be Spanish workers? Will they continue calling workers from other countries, mainly from Latin America? What will be the position of the unions? This is a very interesting political question. For the unions, it's really difficult to take a position. In principle, they will say, well, something like the fraternity of all the workers. But in fact, there is a very closed labor market. If it is a market that opens doors, we may expect receiving millions and millions of workers from other countries. So the unions have to say, with half of the face, yes, we are in favor of international mobility, but with the other half of the face, they will say, no, we are already complete, we cannot open for receiving more workers, for giving care. So, who will produce in Spain in the next 10, 25 years the work of care that will be needed? In the different communities, we all have heard about the desertization, more or less, of most of our territory. So many communities are losing population, but the communities losing population are not the rich populations, they are poor populations. Will the public administration in such communities provide the services they need for taking care mostly of the ancient people, of the aged population? No, because they have no resources. How will they get the resources? They will take it from other richer communities. We have this problem every day on our table. The rich communities, for instance, Catalonia, País Vasco, will pay for the care of the aged population in Andalusia or in Extremadura. We only have two ways of dealing with this problem. First, a new social contract. A new social contract that will open a new era of redistribution of the burden of care. Care has been very often considered a richness, and in fact it is a richness, of course. Caring is a richness. We are producing well-being for all the country. It is, I would say, one of the main richnesses of the country, the production of well-being through care. But we cannot pay for it. Our economy is not so productive as to produce a lot of plusvalías that will be redistributed. We have a production structure that needs a lot of work, for instance, in tourism, for instance, in one hotel, one little bar, but it is not very productive. The only way for producing very productive jobs will be having a lot of investment in capital and in technology, in science. Are we producing the kind of productive structure that will produce plusvalias, that will be able to be redistributed among all the population? If we have an economic structure that doesn't produce plusvalias, we won't be able to redistribute for the population out of the market. In this case, if we don't redistribute the extra values of the production, the only way is to redistribute the social contract between male and female, or between the youth and the elder. Up to today, most care has been provided with no payment by women. Now it's different, not only because Constitution says that discrimination is forbidden, but because women are in the labor market and they cannot be available for producing care. If women are not available for producing care, who will produce it? Only we have a way, redistributing inside households the burden of care, the richness of care, if we want to see it in a very positive way. Redistribution and more redistribution and more redistribution. The youth is not producing care for others. They assume that this is not their duty. But the increase of the demand will be so high that the state won't have money enough to pay all the new requirements, all the new demands of care. The market, in my opinion, has to improve a lot, because now market is producing services of care only for the higher top of the social structure. I know many geriatric residences where the cost for 1 month is 6,000 euros. 6,000 euros. Because they charge every, for instance, change of the position of the dependent person. One person in bed needs to be changed of position every 3 hours, no matter if it is Christmas Day or it is the first day of August. The sick person needs to be changed in position. One person only cannot do it. Very often the sick are too heavy and it is required 2 people doing the change. This is a lot of money, and they very often need to change the clothes, the intimate clothes, because they don't control urinary or excretory process. It is hard, very hard. It takes a lot of effort doing it. I referred before to the Alzheimer. One person suffering a very advanced degree of Alzheimer isn't able to breathe, doesn't recognize the caregiver. Very often they think they are a raper or assassin, something terrible. They cry, who is this one? He will kill me. It is very hard. They have to be very well paid in case we want to pay them. And we will have more and more and more people with Alzheimer and with other sicknesses related to the aging. Well, after this, I assume that all of you are absolutely pessimistic about future. How can I not be pessimistic after saying what I have said? Well, perhaps here. I can resume my position playing with you in what I call a very interactive session. in this interactive session, I will give you the floor, and I will continue with my mouth closed. So you will be required to express your opinions in what I call the scenarios. You know, scenario is a word that comes from theater, but also from statistics. In statistics, they say it is the probability that something happens. Well, first scenario, the demographic framework. We will start, among all of us, we'll decide how many hours of care are required in Spain 1 year. So we will do it just with a little help from our demographers, who will say, well, we have some X million of children. Every children will need, as we said, the canon is 1 for the group of age in the middle of the structure. For the children, very, very young children, it will be 3 multiplied by the number of children we have. After, we add how many children we have from 5 to 14. We multiply it by 2, because we said the canon will be, in this case, for 2. And after, we will say how many we have between 15 and 65. Just we multiply by 1, because they are the canon. We add now the population between 65 and 80. We multiply it by 2. We add it, and after, we add the population over 80, and we multiply the demand by 3. We add, and we have the addition. That is the demand, the whole demand. Well, this is more or less easy to do. But now is your floor. You have to decide how we will divide the demand in order to complete the demand and to give an answer to everybody. So, what will you say that will produce the demand, will produce the services to satisfy the demand? Who? Who will do it? The demographers will tell us how many people we have in this group. Perhaps in one case, if we say this kind of people will do it, the demographers will say it's not enough. We have not enough people in this group, they will say. So first, for instance, just this is one hypothesis, one scenario. Who agree with this? We have the total demand, we already did it, and now we have to divide by the producers. Who will be the producers? For instance, only women and only of this age. Do you agree? Do you like this solution? Only women, only of this age? No? So to the next one. Next one. The younger will be out, only from 18 to 64. Do you like this solution? No? Okay, next one. From 18 to 70 and only women. Do you agree? No? Another one. Excuse me, but it is like the hermanos Marx in the camarote. Well, second one. Now there is a change. Do you notice the change? Does it say women? No, it says total population. First, total population, male and female, 15 to 64. Do you like it? No? Another one. From 18 to 64. Better? Not enough? Okay, next one. 18 to 70. Enough? No? Okay, next one. Ha-ha. Ha-ha. Only the unemployed. All the unemployed, go and take care. Do you like this solution? The unemployed perhaps don't like it. Do you? Okay. If you don't like it, well, we will go to a next one, a little more complex. And now we are saying, no, it is not only the population. Now we are taking into account the institutions. We will start with population, assuming that population and households is the same. Is it the same household and population? Not exactly. Mainly, why? Because inside the households, women don't play the same role as male. So saying family or saying households, if you excuse me because I'm a little rude, is a way of faking. Faking? Yes, fakes. Is it a fake? Because household or population very often, in fact, means women. But we say it in a different way that looks nicer. But it's the same. It's not the same in any case. So now we are including. We have here the total demand, and now we are trying to find the producers. First producer, the household. Well, if we have 100, the demand we say it is equal to 100, how much will be satisfied by the households? I mean, no payment inside the household. And we don't say it, but we are meaning more or less by women. How much, from 100 demands, how much will be satisfied by the households? Don't say it, just think about it. Second producer, public administration. How much? For instance, 50%? It depends. If you are a believer in one specific party, probably. If you are a believer in the party number one, you will say 100%. If you are a believer in this other party, probably you will say nothing. The state shouldn't put the hand in this problem. So it depends. I don't know, your opinions. Let's say, for instance, 50%, well, 20%, 10%, as you prefer. But if you only give to the public administration a 10% of the obligation of satisfying demand, you know that you have 90% that someone else have to solve. Market. It is also a very political question. If you are a member of the party, this party, you will say, no, the market, nothing. This should be provided for everybody exactly the same, no matter how much money they have. So the answer of this kind of party member probably will be zero. Zero for the market. If you are more a liberal, very inspired in the creativity of the enterprises, probably you will answer 90% or 50%, or you decide. And finally, volunteers. Volunteers. In the next future, if we are not able to pay it with money, if we don't like to do it or we cannot solve the problem in the households, what about the volunteers? They will have to be more active. They will solve a higher proportion of our problems of care. Should we put our effort in organizing people? For instance, now there are very, very active and very efficient organizations, associations for mental sickness, for Alzheimer, for instance, but also very efficient is the association for, how is the name in English, no, or in Spanish, I don't remember, for riñón, for the kidney. How is it, this sickness of kidney, that they need to go into one machine and change? Dialysis, exactly. There are very active and very good associations. But also, for instance, for children with Down syndrome, even grandfathers, grandparents, they have their own organization. Should we increase the potentiality of such organizations, of volunteers? In Madrid, there are a lot of organizations just for giving company to aged people living alone and not having a family. Should we do this? How much can we rely in the provision of care by volunteers? You perfectly know that there are many conflicts between the unions and the volunteers. Very often, just they go clashing. They are denounced because it is intrusism, and there are many problems. Can we rely in this kind of solution? In other words, can we avoid relying, at least partially, in this kind of new organizations? I have, I think, to say goodbye. No, not goodbye, but to stop talking myself. And to finish with this, it is your floor to say, I think the situation now is this one. First step. Second step. I think the situation in 10 years will be this one. You think about it. Perhaps it is a dream, or perhaps it is a nightmare. I don't know, but you think about it. And after saying what you think it will be, I ask you to think about what you want that it should be. The first one is just a description. The second one is your will, your wishes. Is it consistent? Your wishes coincide with your predictions? Is it closer? It is very far? In case it is close, it's okay. Just be quiet. In case it is very distant, you only have one option, and it is a political one. You have to think about the ways, the measures should be taken just to shorten a little the distance between your dreams or your nightmares and your expectations of what will happen. And I finish. Thanks a lot, and I am open to your questions. Thank you.